What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Crew 2, and well, as y'all know, it is Wednesday, which means the new summon is now live, and for this week we have the Dominion Rival Stage 3. It also has a really cool looking Aston Martin Vulcan the Duke, which I would say this car is definitely going to be worth going after. By the way, if you might have been wondering, you do get to drive this thing in the summit as well, which I will jump into this here in a second. But after running this car for a little bit in the race, I would say this thing's definitely going to be worth a look. And not only that, this thing also looks really cool with this color scheme on it. So moving over to the rewards on the summit, we're going to have the legendary half set boosted for the touring cars. That's definitely going to be worth going after if you guys do want a fade magnet set. It's also going to have bucks and followers, so that's going to be what you're going to want on there. Then in gold, we have the crown shaped smoke, which I would say is going to be pretty interesting if you guys do like smokes. But moving over to the last summit, until the next season on the Crew 2 is definitely kind of weird to say. I feel like these seasons really do fly by, but I can't wait to see what they do in the next one. But anyway, in gold we have the legendary half set boosted for the touring cars once again. That's going to have bucks and followers on there, so at least this set's going to be worth going after compared to some of the other ones we have seen where the fix-it stats on there honestly make no sense whatsoever. And then in platinum we have the Cyan Spangled Nitro, which I think this is going to be a pretty cool looking one. I personally don't really use all these that often, but for the detail of that one, I would say this might be one of the cooler nitros we have seen recently. Taking a look at this summit, by the way, we're going to have 4 ice track events on this one, probably because, the name is Ice Crown, so it kind of, explains itself. Plus, the top right is going to be a 5th one for Vehicle Force, so having that Mass Leader Charger in the Street class, then we also have the KS Mass Leader in the Hypercar category. I'm not really surprised why they make these Vehicle Force, because you pretty much have to use the cars they give you, because if you guys were able to use those, it would make these way too easy to do for everybody. I also noticed the Hypercar race is going to be a forced vehicle one as well, so I would say this summit might be pretty fun. But that's basically going to do it for the upcoming summits because we really only have the Ice Crown on here. I would say by next week we're probably going to get some type of information on the next season, which I would say a lot of players are probably pretty excited to see. But now moving over to the summit here, starting off with the slalom. So for this one, I did end up running the Ducati Panigale R once again. This is going to be in the salt flats, by the way, so if you guys were to use like an Alpha GP vehicle, I notice you're probably going to struggle because that car kind of bounces all over the place. So for this one, I would recommend pretty much any other class. You could run a rally raid vehicle, a hypercar. My friend actually ran a monster truck on this and still got 154,000 points. So I really like the fact that you definitely can mix up these skills even more because it's going to make them a lot more fun. And now moving over to the next skill is going to be an escape, and for this one it is going to be with a boat. So for me, I did run the 1414 Demon. I would say this is probably going to be the only boat you guys are going to want to use on this one because of the speed and or the stability and handling this boat has. I would not recommend using any other boat for this one. My friend did run the Vector and still got 6,400 yards, so the Vector could be a pretty good option as well, but the way that boat handles, I would say the Demon's going to be a better option. And now moving over to the other slalom, you actually get to drive a boat on this one, so I would recommend the Vector V40R mainly because of the agility this boat has. I would also say the handling on the Vector is going to be unmatched for slaloms. If you guys really wanted to though, you could definitely run the 1414 Demon, but if you haven't tried the Vector out on the slaloms, I definitely recommend giving this boat a go. And now moving over to the first event in the summit is going to be an Alpha GP race, and for this one, you do get to drive the infamous KTM Expo R, which I would say is going to be a pretty fun car. Funnily enough, I did end up going back into my settings and adjusting the car a little bit. I definitely did a lot better on that run with this car, so I would recommend trying out those settings on the KTM. I do feel like it's a lot better than it was before, and one thing I also wanted to mention, by the way, guys, is it seems a lot of the scoring in this summit is going to be very lenient. So I got 3 minutes and almost 7 seconds there, 124,000 points. My friend got 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And he got a little over 118,000 points, and also the KTM Expo R definitely shines on these tracks, so if you guys have not really got to use this car all that much, you're definitely going to see why so many people run this vehicle on pretty much all the events and the skills. And now moving over to the next event is going to be the forced vehicle race where you get to drive the new Aston Martin. And for this one, I would say this car is going to be pretty fun to use. But again, guys, you don't have to go crazy on these with points because I noticed they're very lenient, as I did mention before. And for this car is going to be base level, so it's not really going to be the fastest thing out there, but if you really do want to get a crazy score on this, you will probably have to slipstream someone and or a few people to keep the speed up on this car just a little bit more, but for the most part, I am looking forward to testing out the Aston Martin more in the future. And then moving over to the next touring car race is going to be with the Pagani Zonda R, and for this one, I'm not going to lie, I'm not a big fan of this car for the most part. I really don't know why, I'm just not a huge fan of how this thing shifts and or accelerates coming out of turns in different gears. Then again, I do run manual, so the car is going to probably be a little bit harder to use, but I would recommend putting this thing in automatic if you guys want to try to get a better time. I think in manual, the car is kind of wonky to come out of the turns at the fastest way possible, but overall, I would say the Zonda R is going to be pretty good with its handling, but the speed of the Zonda R I would say is going to be the main thing that really hurts this vehicle, but isn't going to ruin this car in any way. And then moving over to the other touring car race is going to be a no restriction, so for this one I did decide to run the Lamborghini Gallardo Super Trofeo. I'm not gonna lie guys, I never normally run this vehicle and or the Renault because I know how good these cars are. Funnily enough, I was going to use the Koenigsegg CC but I was like, you know what? Let me jump into the Lamborghini and really see why this car is going to be so much better, and I'm not going to lie, it's honestly pretty incredible the way this car can go around turns a lot faster than the CCGT, and I can also really see why so many players love the Lamborghini and the Renault, because these cars really are the best in the class. And now moving over to the next event is going to be an air race, which honestly we haven't seen one of these in a really long time. So for this one, you do get to drive the Harmon Rocket 3, which I would say was probably everyone's favorite plane back in the day. It was actually my go-to plane before I started using the Zivco, and I can definitely see why this plane is so good. But again, guys, with this event, it looks like the scoring is going to be very lenient. So I was only 4 seconds faster than my friend, and it's only 3,000 points there, so you really don't have to go crazy with the scoring on these. Just make sure you get a decent one, like a minute and 50 seconds or so, just to keep your score a little bit higher there so you can be higher in the point bracket. That way you can definitely get that Aston Martin. And now moving over to the final event in this summit is going to be an Alpha GP race, and for this one, you do get to race on one of the Dominion Forsberg tracks, which I think was actually pretty fun. I also chose the KTM Expo R because I really do feel like this thing is incredible for the tracks, but if you guys really wanted to, you could probably use the Alpha Mark X as well. I think that car is pretty good, but for the overall agility on tracks, I would say the Expo R is definitely going to be your best option. And this race was also pretty dang fun to use with a different class, so hopefully in the future of the Crew 2 or maybe the next game that Ubisoft is working on, we could probably use other vehicles in different class races and all that I think would be really fun, but for the most part guys, I would say this summit is going to be pretty solid, and if you guys have any questions at all, let me know in the comments below. Let's jump right into this.
Yeah.